everybody knows her as Jessica Fletcher, the mystery writer who kept the world safe from grisly murderers in the long-running series Murder, She Wrote. To the theater, however, she'll always be the original Mame, the original Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd. Welcome to Women in Theater. I'm Linda Weiner, theater critic of Newsday, and our guest today is Angela Lansbury, who won 4 Tony Awards for Best Actress in a Musical from 1966 to 1979, which is still a record. Maybe we can get her back. Do you miss it, the theater?
Of course I do. You know, I was walking down 57th Street today, and I was looking around, and New York was at its most beautiful. And I said to myself, how did you ever make it on Broadway? It's so difficult to get into a theater, for goodness sakes. And I was suddenly awed by the fact that I had. It made me feel a little bit better, you understand, because if you've been away from the theater, as I have for a number of years, you kind of forget what you did do in the theater. Well, and of course, a lot of people don't even know that I was ever in the theater.
Isn't that bizarre? I know. They'd say, "Oh, you're doing Jessica Fletcher." I'd say, "Well, yeah, and Mrs. Lovett." Sweeney Todd, Mrs. Lovett. Did you have any idea when you were preparing it with Stephen Sondheim that it would be the major work that it turned out to be?
I truthfully had great trust in the material, but I wasn't sure that the audience would buy into this very bloody spectacle that we were going to present. You know,
you made meat pie.
I made meat pies. You know, everything was, blood was getting splattered over the people in the first row. I never forget the first preview. I mean, people were shocked. You know, they really were shocked, and they didn't really like it very much. But they were fascinated by the concept and the music and the singing and the whole different kind of way a show was presented. So indeed, we got the Tony that year. It was the best show of the year. And from that point on, we were home free.
Well, I think now it's the demon barber of Fleet Street is a barber who kills people, and then you, as Mrs. Lovett, bake them into pies. And right. You go from having the worst pies in London to the best pies in London. Yeah. When you're Mrs. Lovett, you have these 2 little pigtails as sort of like a little Pekingese dog. Okay, every single Mrs. Lovett since has the little Pekingese dog. Was that your idea?
I wish I could say it was.
Oh, no, just lie. No. It's okay. No one will call you on it.
No, it was Fran who thought of it, and I can't think of her last name, but that's where I am in the history of the theater. I forget people's names. But it was her idea, the wig. Not only was that her idea, but at the first preview, she decided that I was too clean, even though I had a filthy old jersey on with big holes in it and everything. And so she had me come down into the basement where all the seamstresses were doing last-minute stuff on the costumes. And she took a plate of spaghetti bolognese, and she just threw it at me. And I went on stage with this stuff dripping down me. We tried to, you know, do a little mopping up, but the smell nearly put me off doing the performance. I was very cross. However, didn't matter. It all helped.
If you look, you really have had at least 3 careers, right?
Yes.
I mean, we should be doing, we have 30 minutes and we should be doing 3 hours. So the first part is the movie career with MGM, and there you were playing a lot of people's mothers.
True. I started off rather well.
Very
well with Gaslight and the Picture of Dorian Gray and
both
National Velvet.
Both the same year, and then you got 2 Oscar nominations right off, and you were still a teenager.
Right.
Okay.
So I got spoiled up front, you know. So I was under contract to MGM, though, and those days studios, they had the last call on what you did, and you didn't go to other studios. You were owned, you know, lock, stock, and barrel by the studio you were under contract to. So I had a term contract. So they could put me into anything they wanted. And in those days, you did what you were told. You didn't have any recourse to walk out. If you walked out, you were out of a job. And I was too young and too untried to know how to do that.
So you were Warren Beatty's mother, and of course the most famous, I believe, in Manchurian Candidate. You were so scary. You Lawrence Lawrence Harvey's
Harvey's mother, that's right.
And anybody who hasn't seen the original Manchurian Candidate ought to go right out now and rent it, right?
It's interesting because I think that most everybody has seen it now. Yeah. And if they didn't, they also saw it when the new version came out, which was no contest, you know. They were quite different, actually, the two movies, even though the theme was the same and the general situation was the same, but it wasn't. Because in the first place, we were doing it in the Korean War, and then the second movie was more about the present political situation. So it was not, as I say, no contest. They were two different movies, but I like to think that the original was the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah, it will be for all of us forever,
well,
I think.
Lovely. Mm-hmm.
So there was the movie career, but we're women in theater, so we're going to head over to theater.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother was an actress.
Yes. So theater was part of my childhood growing up. Years. I mean, very much so.
In London?
In London. My mother was a leading actress in the West End theatre, as it was called. The West End was the Broadway of London. And she was a leading lady, but she was also a character actress, just as I became. And I was a little bit daunted by seeing her in the theatre. It worried me as a child because I thought when somebody was shouting at my mother, I was very upset by that. And I can understand why. I know why, because you don't like to see your mother being shouted at by some nasty man. But, you know, I didn't understand. I was too young to realize that it was all make-believe. I grew up and I learned. And thanks to her, she took me to see some of the great performers of that era in England, in London. And I didn't come to America, you know, until 1940.
Yes, and you came on an evacuation boat with other children during the Blitz.
That's right. Yes, I did. The Blitz had not actually begun when we left England, but I think the first great big air raid happened on Liverpool, which was the city that we sailed from, literally the day after we left. And our boat was one of the last boats to get out without being torpedoed. So that was when my theater career really started then, because it was through the American Theater Wing, actually, that I got...
You had a scholarship.
I got a scholarship to the not Weber Douglas, that was London, to the Fagan School of Dramatic Art in the Rockefeller Center here. And I had 2 great years learning the American way of training for theater, having already started in England, so I had that bit of classical background, which was very useful as time went by. But anyway, I went to school with a lot of people that some who you might have known. Jeff Chandler was in my class. Would you believe it?
I used to think he was very handsome.
Oh, yes, he was. Yes, he was. And various others went to Weber, to the Fagan School. So I graduated from there.
Then you did some cabaret?
Yes.
Did your mother teach you how to be Lily?
No, she did not. She had nothing to do with that side of my career.
Okay.
No, she helped me later. No, there was a young student at the school with me at Fagan, and he decided that I had this ability to sing. I had a freaky voice. I could do all kinds of things with it. And he felt that I should do a cabaret act. So darn it, he put one together, and he built it all within the confines of one song by Noel Coward called I Went to a Marvelous Party. So within that song, we introduced all of these characters, German singers and French chanteuses. We did everything, and we used all the voices that I had, which, of course, subsequently I've used since. But anyway,
once or twice.
I couldn't believe it. I did an audition at Roseland for all of the agents. And by golly, I got an agent. And the next
you were
thing
like
I know,
17 years old?
I was 16.
16.
He got me a job up in Montreal, in Canada, at a wonderful kind of Russian night spot called the Samovar. And so I went up there. I lied about my age, said I was 19, and I got paid $60 a week. And that was the beginning of my career.
And then your mother was in LA, and she called you there, and that's how you went over there instead of really starting the career in the theater.
Yes, which really bugged me, because I never felt that anyone had really proven themselves as an actress unless they did it on the boards, on Broadway or on the West End of England. Well, obviously, as I was in New York, and New York was now my home, I wanted to play on Broadway. And I had to wait, well, almost 14 years before I could get back to Broadway. I went to Los Angeles first and did those movies, Gaslight, Dorian Gray, et cetera, and then
singing
in 1957,
Goodbye, Little Yellow Bird.
Oh yes, singing around.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Yeah. And then I came back to Broadway with Bert Lahr. Mm-hmm.
And what was that?
And that was Hotel Paradiso. Mm-hmm. That was in '57, and. Then I went back to Los Angeles because my family were there, although I brought my children to Los Angeles, to New York, and they spent, I only did it for 6 months. I always had 6-month contracts. Couldn't be gone away from my husband longer than that. And so then I went back to LA, and then I got another request from Tony Richardson to come and do A Taste of Honey with Joan Plowright.
You were Joan Plowright's mother?
Yes. And that was really kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, why would they keep making you people's mothers? You didn't, there's no vanity in you dressing up and putting age spots on and things.
No,
at that
I
age.
always remember she wanted to put big sort of side pieces of bosom onto me to make me look huger. And I said, no, I don't want to do that because I think I'm too young and I hope I have a career ahead of me. And if you put me into that slot, I'll never get out of it, you know. So, well, I almost didn't get out of it, but you know what saved my bacon? Mame.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing that, you know, just plucked me out of that kind of mediocrity of a career that I had up till then.
Is Jerry Herman's musical. And
Jerry Herman,
your
I have
first
to give it to him.
big starring role. Huge hit.
Huge, huge success. And to this day, it's a lovely record. I'm so proud of that recording. It's a good old-fashioned disc. I love it.
That was '66, but before that, you were a pioneer with Stephen Sondheim also. In Anyone Can Whistle.
Yes, not forgetting Stephen. Yeah. You know, talking of being plucked out of Los Angeles.
Where did he find you for his first? That was really the first real Sondheim musical where he did the music and the lyrics.
Absolutely, and I think Arthur Lawrence had a lot to do with that, because neither one of them had ever seen me except in the movies. They'd seen me in the movies, in the early movies that I had done, and I don't know what gave them the idea that, well, they'd seen me in those 2 straight plays that I had done. Mm-hmm. So that was their frame of reference. So I think they came to me and they said, can you sing? Do you think you could sing loud enough? That was a big thing in those days. There were no microphones, you know. Mm-hmm. Can you sing loud enough for Broadway? Can you project your voice? They came out, both of them, to Los Angeles, and they worked with me for a couple of days, and I did an audition for them. I sang A Foggy Day in London Town, as loud and as high as I possibly could. And they said, yeah, we think you could do it, you know, with a lot of coaching, a lot of help. And so they arranged for that. So I came to Broadway, and we opened in Venice. No, actually we opened in Philadelphia.
And then it ran what?
9 performances.
9 performances.
9 unbelievable performances. Most people in New York at that time said they saw it.
This is one of those shows. Isn't that one of those shows where everybody says if everybody had gone to see it, it would still be open for the number of people who say that they saw it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and the person who saw it, of course, was Jerry Herman, and it was from that he decided that I could do Mame.
And after that, you also did Dear World.
Dear World with him, yes.
So you really worked with both of the composers who at that time were sort of considered the polar opposites of Broadway. There was
they were and still are. It's so interesting. They're so totally different, you know, in their approach to musical theater. And then, of course, I went to England. And it was in England that I did the show that's really I just adored doing, which was Gypsy. And it took a couple of years of persuasion on the part of the wonderful young producers, Fritz Holt and Barry Brown, and Arthur, incidentally, who directed the production.
Arthur Lawrence.
Yes, Arthur Lawrence. And he wanted me to do it. And I was afraid to, because I thought I just not up to being
Ethel
Merman, you know. That's not my speed. But they said, no, we don't want you to worry about how you sing it. We know you can sing it, not like Ethel Merman, but you can sing it. We want you to act, Rose. So that I could buy into that. Oh, you bet. Because I think that Gypsy is one of the great musical books of all time.
Absolutely.
And the lyrics are incredible. They're simply wonderful. And so that was a joy for me to do that, and then to bring it to New York.
Was it strange? That's the only time you were actually in that kind of a revival where you were following someone else. Other than that, you were creating the roles. These
yes,
musical
absolutely.
Roles.
Because I'd never seen a Merman in it, but I felt her recording of it was one of the absolute ace, discs of that era, and still is to this day. I mean, I think the overture to Gypsy is one of the most exciting ones in the theater, and that's Julie Stein. You know, he's the one who was instrumental in that. So I love that experience.
You were mentioning that at that time you had to project, and there weren't microphones.
That's right.
Are there microphones? Obviously, one of the things that's changed a great deal, and now, you know, some people think ruined it forever.
Yes, they did.
And you have, yes,
they have.
Yes. Are there other things that you can see that are really different from the time when you felt that Broadway was at its strongest when you were working?
Compared to now?
Yeah.
Well, I think that what's totally different is that we generally, in most instances, we did what we call book musicals. They were not a bunch of, some people would say they were a bunch of songs strung together, but there was usually a pretty strong storyline. And this was what made it possible for people like me to get out there and, you know, and perform with any sense of feeling that what I was doing had some rhyme and reason, you know, because Mame had rhyme and reason. You had a very strong situation with the boy, and certainly in Gypsy, it's a huge story going on there.
Yeah. Mama Rose and Auntie Mame are in some ways similar women.
Well, they, absolutely, they do share certain qualities. In today's musicals, it's more kind of, it's show-off time. It's more, it's a different beat, it's a different aspect of life. The world has changed, and musicals have changed along with it. And we've missed out on, we're missing out on something. Because I know that my grandchildren, who are of an age, they're 15 years old, they're 19, they're 20, 21, 22, and now, if they come to New York, the shows that they love are The Sound of Music, you know, things like that. They're really not terribly interested in seeing these hot, new kind of jazzy shows, you know. I'm going to see one on Friday night. I can't wait.
What are you going to see?
Avenue Q.
Avenue Q.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah.
You're also, we're taping this in the fall of 2004, and this weekend also you're being honored by the Actors Fund with Johnny Depp. I thought, Angela Lansbury, Johnny Depp, of course.
Why? I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, the Actors Fund want to honor Johnny for reasons that, you know, they know. He's very sharp, and I'm very fond of him. I mean, I think he's a very interesting performer. He's really done some far-out interesting things. So I'm a Johnny Depp fan, actually.
Had you ever met him?
No.
Well,
I know that one time he wanted to see something that I had done. I don't know if he wanted to do an imitation of me or what. And I wondered if he'd seen me do The Pirates of Penzance. Because you remember when I played the Lady Pirate?
Yes.
I thought maybe he saw something in that.
Yeah.
Ruth,
yeah.
That's right. Maybe he thought there was something in Ruth that he could use in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
That's the only connection with him that I could
ask him tomorrow.
Possibly. I'll ask him. I sure will.
Now, how did you get from there to Murder, She Wrote? We can do a couple of minutes anyway on the thing everybody knows.
All right, a couple of minutes on Murder, She Wrote. Well, let's see now. After I finished doing Sweeney Todd, I did unfortunately a play that didn't run, and it was called A Little Family Business, and it opened in New York. Actually opened out in Los Angeles, and it came into New York, and it closed. So at that point, my husband and I looked at each other, and I said to him, I think it's time that I consider going into television, because, you know, you always look for some kind of annuity, you know, in your career that will maybe keep you in your old age. So, actors are always on the lookout for an opportunity. And I very carefully kept away from television up to that point. I was afraid of burning myself out. Isn't that ridiculous? But I was right. I could have done. So I waited. And then finally I was offered 2 different scripts, one by Norman Lear and one by the hierarchy of Universal Studios.
What I love about Murder, She Wrote is that there's this really jaunty music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's
never
people
cared for the
dead
music.
and jolly music, and I always think, what was, like, you know, two different sides of my brain? Yes, yes. Well, don't tell me you don't like the music, because I now, of course, love it.
At least you know what's coming on.
Right.
You hear that music, you know, oh my God, here she comes, you know, another body.
James Agee said that you remind him of the milkmaids in 18th century pornographic prints.
I love that.
Isn't that
love that
quote?
It's a wonderful quote, isn't it? Yes.
It really, I've read that you thought that somehow that your face wasn't beautiful enough for the Lana Turner roles.
I knew it wasn't. I just wasn't that. I wasn't in that category at all. I absolutely wasn't, and you know, I mean, that's okay. I knew always that I would be a character actress, and of course I was immediately. Even at 19 years old, I was playing 36, 38, 40, playing people's wives, mothers, and all the rest of it. And it hurt me up to a certain point until I did Mame. So Mame saved me from that, a fate worse than, you know. And
you have been wife and mother, which most people don't have that kind of continuity in their careers, that they also have a life. Peter Shaw, your husband, died 2 years ago?
Just 2 years ago.
Just 2 years ago.
Yes.
But you were really a family business.
Yes, we were. And we still
with
are.
Your children
I'm
also.
happy to say that we still are a family business, and that I still have a production company with my son Anthony, who was with me on Murder, She Wrote. He directed a great many of them. He's moved from being a director to being a producer, which is good, just as I am. You know, I enjoy that side of the business very much. I love the business of the business. So that allows me to keep my hand in, my foot in the door, and not to give up. In fact, I'm thinking about doing a half hour. I'll just throw that in, a half-hour comedy, not a sitcom, but a human comedy.
Mm-hmm. Whatever happened with The Visit? You were going to do the Candor and Ebb musical, and then you didn't do it, and then Chita Rivera was going to do it, and now nobody's doing it.
Well, Chita did it at the Goodman, you know.
Oh, she did.
And yes, she did, and it was quite well reviewed. And they wanted to bring it into New York, and they just couldn't get the money. They couldn't get the backing. It was one of the sad things, because it was an interesting project, and if Peter hadn't become sick and I had continued with it, I have a feeling we could have brought it off, but with a lot of work. Needed more work.
The only time I've seen you on the stage since Sweeney Todd, and I guess Family Business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was a benefit for a theater that Mike Nichols put together a lot of actors and playwrights, and you did an unforgettable monologue. Well, there was like another character, but I forget him. He was forgettable. By Terrence McNally.
Right.
And you were an actress who used to be on the stage, and she came from television. And I remember that the line that stuck with me is that in the theater you starve and you're forgotten. And then you stood there and you said, but how it is to stand here and take a bow again. How wonderful it is. Yes. Any chance we'll get you back?
Yes, there's always a chance. I'm happy to say that I'm often asked if it's the right thing, and the moon and the stars are in the right firmament, and I'm in the right firmament, I will come back to Broadway, yes, definitely.
Oh, that would be good.
Yes, and there's a chance. I think there's a chance. Not next year, but the year after. I'm that definite about it.
Something I've always enjoyed about Murder, She Wrote was, you know, in Law and Order, you can see all the New York actors in it, and you think, well, it's like a Ford Foundation grant for New York actors, that at least they get paid so they can afford to work here. And in Murder, She Wrote, there are all these older actors that you obviously intentionally would seek out and give work to.
Yes.
Which is all, and I also saw the young Harvey Fierstein recently in one of them in a rerun. Yes, yes.
That's true. Harvey was
Yeah.
Harvey was with us. Certainly, he was a toy maker.
Yes,
Made a
yes,
toy
yes,
maker.
yes. Cartoonist.
A cartoonist.
Cartoonist.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'd had to do
One of
those.
those. Yeah,
Yes,
he was
yes.
sitting at a desk.
Oh,
like
he
this.
was.
You would seek people out?
Oh, indeed, we did.
Really?
We did, yes. We had an absolutely wonderful casting director on that, Ron. And he really, and Peter, my husband, was wonderful at that, because that was the best thing Peter was good at, was it was casting. So if there was a role that he thought that somebody might be available that could be lured out of retirement in many instances. I mean, there are a lot of women of not so much the theater, but movies, who hadn't worked
MGM
in a
women,
decade.
right?
Yes. You know,
Yeah.
like Eleanor Parker. And that was such a thrill to see her. I was thrilled to have her, because she was a very, very beautiful woman. And she still was, but very unsure of herself at that point. Anybody coming back. So it was great fun to make them feel comfortable and give them the chance to come back and shine again, you know, in a very good role. Because let me tell you, my guests had all the best parts. I just sort of stood on the side and said, well, look under that chair, you know, you might see something of interest there. I never had the drama that they got to indulge in, you know.
Well, we hope we're going to have you back on Broadway. I thank you so much for being here. It's such a privilege. Thank you, Angela Lansbury, and thank you for being here. On behalf of the League of Professional Theater Women, I'm Linda Weiner, and this has been Women in Theater.